to do about it. So,
and whether or not you're a federal employee, you know someone who's a federal employee. Listen, for those of us in Kitsap County, you know somebody who's a federal employee, or you know a business that's dependent upon the money that comes from people who work in federal employees. So we'll talk about all that in the
Which
the 9
is just
o'clock
about
hour.
every business.
Well, especially in this county. I mean,
Yeah.
and in Washington State, you know, you go from Whidbey Island all the way south to Joint Base Lewis McChord and everything in between. There's a lot of federal jobs around here that put a lot of money into the economy. So we'll talk about all that in the 9 o'clock hour. All right, so let's give her intro again. And joining us live from the beautiful city of Seattle, I believe, is one of the great sports reporters for Root Sports, and she's also the face and the voice behind TalkSportyToMe.com. It's Jen Mueller. Jen, thanks for joining us here on the Outlaw Radio Network.
Well, absolutely. How are you guys doing tonight?
We're doing great. Thanks for joining us, and sorry for some of the technical glitches early on, and thanks for coming on with us tonight. Listen, I got to ask you a question up front before we get into everything else. Is this not like a sportscaster's dream to be in the Seattle market? I mean, the Seahawks are up, the Huskies are up, the Mariners are coming back, the Sonics look like they're maybe around the corner, and maybe an NHL team coming too. Is this not like your dream time to be around here?
It is a pretty exciting time to be around, and I will tell you that after traveling around the country with teams, the sports in Seattle is very different than any place else in the country, and there's a lot of good things that come along with that. One of the best things is that those of us who work in the market are actually friends with each other, which might sound a little bit unusual or, you know, wonder why I bring up that point. But if you were to live in New York or Boston and you worked at a TV station, you would not talk to anybody else at any of the other TV stations. So I'm fortunate that here we all get along. We cover some fun guys, and we have a good time doing it.
So talk about that a little bit. You know, one of the things I read an article with Shannon Dreyer, and I thought of you actually coming on the show tonight. But Shannon talked about one of the articles that she, because she is one of the reporters with the Mariners as well. But she wrote about how it was just really cool getting to know some of the players. Talk about how cool it's been for you in getting to know these guys on a day in and day out basis, and you get to see them as not just the faces of an organization or the guy coming up to bat of the ninth. You actually get to see these guys before the game, after the game, win or lose. Talk about how that is to get to know these guys in real life.
You know, it is an interesting thing. I will say that I'm very fortunate that we have some very good guys here. They really are. They're gentlemen. They are young men. They are growing up. They're maturing. And that is fun to see them and to see that there is another side to them. I will tell you, though, it is also one of the hardest parts of my job. You know, it's one of the parts that I enjoy the most. But, you know, every day when I get to, let's say, Safeco Field, since that's coming up, I get to the ballpark at about 3 o'clock. Clubhouse opens about 3:40 for the media, and I spend about half an hour, 45 minutes just making the rounds. And I just talk to these guys, and we talk about everything other than baseball. We talk about, you know, movies and where they've gone in town and what they're looking forward to on the next road trips. And you get to know them as people, and that's really fun. Right up until October comes and the season ends. And you may never see these people again.
right.
And that's kind of the hard thing of building relationships. It is a necessary part of the job. I would not trade it for anything. But I will tell you that the last few weeks have been very difficult after the Seahawks season. There's always kind of that transition that makes it difficult. Then you turn the page and you move on to the next season.
So one of the things that I noticed, and this goes right to what you were just talking about and the end of the Seahawks season, you had a post, Jen, on one of your video blogs where you talked about the simplest little things that can be said, and I'm talking about the comment from Russell Wilson. Right? You know what I'm talking about? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're walking along and a young man, a rookie, now you're really a veteran, right? So all of a sudden,
I am a veteran, and I am considerably older than some guys now.
And you pointed out that he basically, now refresh my memory, he walks by and he says what to you?
We were in a hotel lobby, and I was just kind of walking, you know, I must have come back from a day of shopping, and he said, "Hey, Jen, you know, I'm so glad I saw you today. You know, hope you're having a great day."
And that meant a lot.
One of those ones, it does. It means a heck of a lot. You know, when those guys, this sounds silly for as much time as I spend around them, when they address me by name, it makes me feel so special. because even though I'm around them all the time, it's like, oh my gosh, you actually paid attention.
Yeah.
You know what my name is. But I will tell you that when you call them by their first name, they notice too. And that's one of those things that I try to get across, just to anybody, right? If you're in business,
Sure.
The fact that somebody knows your name, that's a pretty big connection point.
Right, absolutely, and I draw that. I ask about that because on your site, Talk Sporty to Me. Now you've written a book, Get Noticed, Get Heard, and Get Paid, right?
Well, it's a downloadable ebook right now,
Okay.
so it's short, more of a reference guide. But yeah, the premise is you can't just put your head down and work hard. You need to be able to communicate, and you need to be able to tell people what you're doing and how you're doing it, and be in front of the influencers.
You know what? I love the fact that you're bringing all that up because for us here, sitting here, we've been building this show for years, and it is so hard to get that point across to people that communication is so important. And I hate to say this, but I use as a parallel a turn signal on a car. You got them, use them. They're really important, and they're there for a reason.
I think that is a really good analogy. Yeah, and I think that, there's a lot of books in business that tell you that communication is good, right? And we work in an industry.
Right.
Or you know that it's important to communicate. That doesn't mean that everybody has sharpened up on those tools, though. With texting and email and Facebook and Twitter, all those are great in their place, but it never really takes the place of a conversation. So that's
right.
One of the things I'm trying to get across, and that sports really is one of the best conduits for having a conversation that you could find.
Absolutely. Now I know Kevin has a question here, but I just wanted to ask you something about Talk Sporty to Me. Are you you use as your tagline inspiring conversation and confidence through sports? Do you, when you go out and you talk about this stuff to large audiences? Now, is it for you from the female perspective? Because I mean, the industry that you're in does tend to be male dominated, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's like, yeah. She's really politically correct on that one. So, has it been harder for you? Has it been much more difficult for you to break into the industry?
As far as broadcasting?
Yeah. Well, especially sports.
I think that actually being a female works to my advantage in a lot of ways, and it might not be the ways that you're immediately thinking of, but women, for the job that I do, so my primary job is to do interviews, and to do pre- and post-game interviews, and to get guys to talk to me on cue, on camera, and make it good.
Sure.
Women are naturally inquisitive.
Okay, that's true.
And we're better at building relationships, just in general and as a whole.
Oh, no, nobody disagrees with that.
Those are things that are really key for my job. Mm-hmm. So it's a little easier for me, I think.
Okay, she got us on that one, Kevin. That
That's
explains a lot,
absolutely true. And again, we're talking with Jen Mueller from Root Sports, and also she is the voice and the face behind TalkSportyToMe.com. Jen, listen, let's start off really quick. I want to ask you a couple of questions because, as you mentioned before, we are counting down the days now to spring training, and the big news coming out of Mariner camp, the Mariners on the verge, it looks like, of getting Felix pinned down to a big long-term deal. Some concerns about his elbow, but this deal, I think, speaks really well for the Mariners. I mean, one of the big concerns was, are they going to get him signed to a long-term deal? This looks like great news for the M's going forward.
It does, and I can understand. I'm sure that they're going through, every test possible. If you're going to invest that much money, you want to know what you're getting. I think that the bigger message that it sends is not just that, yes, Felix is worth this much money, but that they want him for a long time. So, if the Mariners show interest in you as a free agent, or if you were wondering if Seattle's a place to go, you are going to have an ace on your pitching staff. And I think that it's a bigger message, just kind of the league, that the Mariners are serious right now. And, they were rebuffed a couple of times during the off season, but I think that this is a pretty big move, and it could set some stuff up for the future.
Well, and then the other end of this too that I thought was really important for the Mariners this offseason, and you mentioned being rebuffed a little bit, but they were out there. They were active in talks for Josh Hamilton, and he didn't come, but they were out there. They were active in it, and you can say a lot of things for Jack Zduriencik in this front office, but the one thing you can't say is that they weren't active. They weren't out there trying to get their names out there, trying to bring some of these guys in, and when they couldn't get some of the big names that they wanted to be a part of that conversation. I thought they filled in very nicely with getting guys like Mike Morris to come in. They made the trade with the Angels to bring in another really good bat and fill in some of these holes and address that offense that this team really needed to get handled.
Yeah, I do think that they did the best that they could. They were out there, and that should inspire some confidence from the fan base and from everybody in the organization, too. And I am very curious. I will head down to spring training on Tuesday. Pitchers and catchers, they will report and practice for the first time on Wednesday. There are so many young moving pieces on this team that this spring training is going to be a pretty big one. I mean, last year we saw some guys that were surprises, Kyle Seager and that sort of thing, but you really need to have some of these young guys come up with big off seasons and make some big strides. And if they did and they continue to improve at the rate that we saw, you could be setting yourself up for something pretty good. I will say, because I've been asked many times in the last week, my prediction for the Mariners, I will not know until after I see them at spring training. If you temper expectations and let's shoot for like 6 wins more than last year, I think we'll be in that ballpark. But it's when you start getting a little unrealistic that the season starts to seem gloomy.
Sure. That's understandable. Then let me ask you a question, because I'm looking at a whole lot of names that the Mariners have brought in the offseason and some guys that they're going to give a shot to that were in the minor leagues last year. Let's talk pitching for a second. I look at the Mariners pitching staff and my mind is just a mess. I'm like looking at them going, who on God's green earth are they going to put in those 2, 3, and 4, and 5 spots? And do you have any idea at this point in time?
Well, I think that we're probably looking at, for the rotation, you're looking at Felix, Blake Bevan, Erasmo Ramirez, potentially Joe Saunders, who will be signed. And who am I missing? Who's the other one?
Well, they got Bonderman, right?
Maybe. Nah, I think that Bonderman could end up to be your Kevin Millwood from last year, because Bonderman is a non-roster invitee.
Gotcha. Okay.
So he could come up big, but I don't know that he is a guarantee.
Is there a chance that Tejon Walker makes this club as the fifth starter?
Danny Holtzen would be further along than Taiwan is. I think that you're probably going to see Taiwan. I saw him last year in AA. He's still very raw. It could be that he starts off in AA and then quickly jumps to AAA this year. But, I'm kind of curious to see if Danny Holtzen might be able to crack into that rotation before the end of spring.
That's what I was kind of curious. Because when they drafted him, part of the reason they drafted him where they did was because they felt he was the most major league ready, right?
Yes, but anytime you get those young arms, those are the most unpredictable, I think.
Sure.
Unless you were Felix, and if you remember when Felix came up, even at 19, you knew he was going to be a phenom.
Oh, yeah, he was a stud. There's no doubt about that. Now, another question about, since spring training is coming up, who should we be, as fans, and I admit it, I'm a junkie, I'm a fan of spring training. I even sit down in the middle of the day and watch some spring training games on television. Who should I be paying attention to as just an unknown quantity, as a rookie coming in, or a college kid, maybe somebody from outside the country? Who should I pay special attention to this year?
If you just want somebody to look for, and I don't think he's going to break the club, it would be, just unprecedented if he did. Mike Zunino will be in his first major league camp. He was the Mariners' overall #1 pick last year. He is a catcher. He's got a great bat. They really like him as a prospect. It'll be interesting to see how he matches up. Again, I don't think he's going to break with the camp. I would imagine he's AA and then AAA. But
sure.
He'll be a fun one to watch. And I'm curious to see what guys like Carter Katz and Brandon Maurer and Stephen Pryor, guys who got a little taste of the big leagues last year, who are hard throwing, hitting triple digits, upper 90s. I want to see what they've done in the offseason.
Oh, that's a really good point. You think those are the kind of guys that may have a real outside shot at bullpen-type work?
I do. Katz and Maurer ended the season in the bullpen. I'm sure that they're not going to come out of camp with the team. But Stephen Pryor is one of those guys who was a big, strong guy, came in, handled the pressure pretty well. I would not be surprised if he was there again.
Well, that's good. I like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of good ones out there.
And then let's talk a little bit about the Mariners infield, because last year I felt like we saw a bit of a roller coaster out of the infield, but I still think that between Ackley and Seager, who out of the two kids coming out of North Carolina, I think everybody said, okay, Ackley's the guy, and Seager's going to be a complimentary player. And I thought Seager just really knocked the socks off of people last year and just really showed that he was going to be a quality major league player. But that infield all the way around, if you start at first base, if Smoke can get on track, that infield looks solid for a group of young players that if they can just start hitting the ball early and build some confidence, they should be okay.
Yeah, that is another one of those storylines to watch. And you remember last year in spring training, Kyle Seager was not mentioned as your everyday third baseman.
Yeah, not
that
at all.
was Sean Seagan's job.
Yeah.
And it was very quickly relinquished to Seager, who did very well. Last year was his first full year in the big leagues. So he had a couple of little mini slumps. Ackley's bat faded at the end of last year, and so we'll have to make sure that he's back on track. He had some off-season surgery, too. And Brendan Ryan's bat needs to get going a little bit. Robert Andino is another name to keep an eye on. Not as an everyday player. He was part of a trade with Baltimore, and he can back up third, short, and second. So he could be kind of an intriguing piece there to spell a guy who's got a decent bat. Could help out that lineup a little bit.
Well, that's good to hear, because I have honestly, and I was unaware that our second baseman was so beat up. Now, was it his elbow?
Gosh, what is it? It was bone spurs. I think it was elbow. You're catching me like in the middle of all my spring training prep and dealing with football injuries on top of baseball injuries. So don't quote me on that one right now.
No, that's okay. I won't hold it against you. Just because I watched him play in the College World Series, and I was just so impressed. He looked like he just hit everything. He put that bat on every piece of leather that came anywhere near the plate, and I've been waiting to see him just break out. And every game it's like, oh, he's going to do it this game, and it's just not happening. Oh. It drives me nuts, but
I know.
Doesn't it?
I know,
right.
But they've got a new they have a new hitting coach this year too. So we'll see what happens there in the cages early in spring.
And in the outfield, go back a couple years when they brought in Griffey and Sweeney, and I really thought that there was some important veteran leadership that came from having those guys in, and especially Sweeney. As much as he didn't play and didn't contribute much offensively, I thought that Mike Sweeney just had a lot to do in the clubhouse. I really feel like Raul coming back for a third stint with this squad with all these young hitters, how much of an impact is he going to make, not just on the field, but in that clubhouse with these young guys, helping them get into that daily routine of what it is to be a successful major league hitter? Yeah,
Raul is going to be big on that. And you're right, Mike Sweeney, his real impact never showed up in the statistics. He is by far one of the top clubhouse guys I have ever seen, and just one of those people that you would be lucky to call a friend and lucky to know for any period of time. So he was incredible, and I think Raul is going to be a lot like that. Now, Raul is very quiet, so I think what you're probably going to get is he's going to set an example, and he's going to work hard, and he's going to go about his routine, and he'll keep guys in check, but he's not going to be that vocal leader that kind of gets them all excited and rallied. I think what we really need is to get one of those young guys to step up and be more of a vocal leader so that they can start taking a little bit more control of the team and just having a better feel of it, because it is about time for one of those young guys to step up.
There you go. I couldn't agree more. And one last question here, for at least for me on baseball. They've got projected, as far as the 25-man roster goes, your center fielder is Franklin Gutierrez, okay? Is he going to be healthy this year, do you think?
I'm
not putting you on the spot by asking that.
I cross my fingers for Goody every spring training.
Yeah.
I sure hope so. Boy, he had a rough year last year.
I know he did, and I sure like him as a player, boy. I'll tell you what.
I know. He's so good. I'll tell you in a week or so what I think he's going to do like, and if he's going to be able to hang through the rest of spring training.
Okay.
And then my final baseball question is, if we assume that Franklin's your starting center fielder, and we assume that Raul has got another spot in that starting outfield, and then you assume that Michael Morris is going to be a starting outfielder, is there room on this squad for Jason Bay to catch on, or is it possible that he may be the odd guy out?
it is possible that he could be the odd guy out. I don't know that Raul will be there every day. I think you can platoon him at first. I think you could make him the DH. So I think that there's room for Bay, because remember, you've got Michael Saunders still and Casper Wells and a couple other guys, Mike Karp, Eric Thames, still fighting for outfield spots.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that was one of the positions last year. You know, I've told this story in the office. You know, we kind of overlooked Michael Saunders last year in spring training, just based on his track record, and didn't know what he would bring to the table. He was one of the biggest surprises last year.
Sure was.
So any of those guys could get hot, have a good spring, and then you've got a different odd man out. So I'm curious and interested to catch up with Jason Bay and see how things are going. I know he's had a rough few years in New York, and he would love to be back home and contributing. So that one, lots of battles out there.
And I lied. I've got one more baseball question for you, and this is purely on a personal level.
He's a guy. Don't take it personally.
I love him as a player, and I don't know why. I love watching him swing the bat. Can you talk about Alex Liddy? I don't feel like he's just a young kid, but the kid is huge. He's 6'4". He's 230. He looks like he should just be knocking him over the fence somewhere. I don't know if there's room for him on this roster right now.
I don't know if there is room for him either, but boy, do I like Alex. He has got a great sense of humor. He is from Italy. He speaks 3 different languages. He's got a very unique way of connecting with guys. He is confident, but not overly cocky, and he is talented enough to play multiple positions. And they have asked him to do different things and to play different spots, and he has picked it up quite quickly. So, you know, I don't want to label him as a utility guy so early in his career, but certainly when you can play multiple positions, infield and outfield, it would be nice to have around. But he's a good jokester. I like having him around. Keeps it light.
Well, see, this is the kind of insight, folks, by the way, that you don't get. Right? I mean, you can't just turn on Root Sports or ESPN and you just don't get this stuff. So
we
thank you, Jen. We appreciate this because as huge sports fans here, and we admit it, we freely admit it. You should have heard us during the football season. We are such homers, it's disgusting. But so be it. You know, that's you know, why we're sports fans.
There's nothing wrong. That means you're a fan. That's
good. that's right. And I'll tell you though, I am looking at MLB's website and their depthcharts.com. And, you know, all of these guys that we got used to seeing last year playing every day, they actually have on the outside looking in the mix for a roster spot, but they don't think they're going to make it, like Mike Karp, like Alex Liddy, Carlos Peguero, Eric Thames, and Casper Wells. So these are, you know, so clearly they feel good about some of the talent that they've brought in and the way that this team, and I'm actually very excited about it as long as they get that pitching squared away.
That's right. A few more runs scored by the offense, settle out that rotation, and we'll be good to go.
Well, there you go. Listen, I just watched that the movie about the Oakland A's and how they developed that. What do they call it? Sabermetrics? Moneyball. Yeah. I like watch that and I go, oh man, that explains so much. Are you serious? I was like, do other teams do that more often, or is that just kind of an Oakland thing?
No, more teams have started to go to the statistical analysis, and the Mariners have somebody in their office staff that does, I shouldn't say office staff, in their front office that does that. Every team has a certain measure that they use. I think the A's just do that perhaps more and rely on that more heavily than other teams.
I got you. Okay, well, that makes sense. All right, can I ask you a couple of – I know you said you're winding down from football. All right. I cannot get over the way the season ended. I freely admit it.
Jen, let me forewarn you. He is the biggest Seahawks homer I've ever met in my entire life.
So?
Well, it's good to have those kind of fans. It's good. That's who we cater to.
That's right.
I'm a pretty big fan myself, so.
You're on the sidelines with the team for every game, right? Home and away?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I do their radio sidelines for the team broadcast. Yes.
So I know you probably try as a journalist to maintain some level of neutrality, right? How can you not get excited?
Well, not when I work for the team. That I will say is the beauty of my job. Root Sports, we openly say that we are rooting for the home team, which is the Northwest team. And when I work for the Seahawks, there's definitely a bias towards the Hawks.
Oh, that's okay. Well, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. Now, Was the first half rough down in Atlanta?
It was, but it was different.
Because we were
I
watching.
would say that after watching Russell Wilson all year long, it was a little harder in Atlanta. But if you go back the week before in Washington,
Yes.
Nothing's happening in the first half, and then the first series after halftime, Marshawn, they drive the field, Marshawn fumbles at the 1 yard line, right?
Right.
And after that, I knew that we could win the game.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't any trouble driving down the field. It was just a matter of putting the ball back in Russell's hands and letting him do what he was going to do.
Right.
It didn't feel great down there until maybe midway through the third quarter.
Right, yeah.
But after that first score, the general feeling on the sideline was, it can be done.
Yeah,
He's going to do it. Don't worry about it. Just let him do his thing, and it'll be fine. And that's why it was so hard in the end.
Yeah, I'm right. I agree with you 100%. And here's the parallel that I was going to – now tell me if I'm really off on this. But here's what I see so far early in Russell Wilson's career. I see a guy that as a quarterback reminds me somewhat of Shaun Alexander as a running back. He's smart about how he runs. He doesn't take unnecessary hits. And he'll use the entire first half of the game if he needs to set up a defense and learn how to read them, and then pick them apart in the second half. Am I off on that? That's really the feeling that I got. She's laughing at me.
I think you're spot on. Unfortunately for Shaun Alexander, that is not always the best quality to have in a running back, I think some guys might say. But I think you're right. He is a smart runner, and Russell avoids unnecessary contact. And, after watching RG3 this year, I know that people liked his explosiveness. And I know that they think that since Adrian Peterson came back from a knee injury, that anybody can come back from that quickly.
Yeah.
RG3 will have to change his game.
Yeah, absolutely.
He has to. Especially if he's going to play on that surface in Washington, you can't keep doing that. Russell will have a longer career if things continue to go the way they go.
Was that field that bad in Washington, the way they made it sound?
I was a little bit fooled by it, to be honest with you, and I kicked myself over early in the game. They came and they asked me about it. And the Seahawks sideline was actually not bad. And the sidelines are one of the things that go quickly, right? Because the field is going to drain, and you're going to have mud, and it's going to be all torn up.
Right.
The sidelines between the actual sideline and the numbers weren't too bad, but the middle of the field was not good. It was awful. I've seen Little League fields that were better than that. And it did contribute to injuries in that game.
And I got to bring this up because of one of your pictures. Are you still reffing football?
I have put that on hold for the last couple of years because I travel so much now on the weekends. And, when we travel East Coast games, I'm gone on a Friday morning. So I've kind of put it on hold. I'll come back to it eventually.
But the point is that when you say you've seen better-looking Little League fields, you mean it, right?
Yeah, and and then I've sprained my ankle working Little League. Field worse than that.
And then, Liz, one last football question for you. In Seattle, we are as a community of football fans completely enamored with Russell Wilson. I mean, I haven't seen this much love fest for a guy in this town since probably Griffey. Maybe Gary Payton, but just the amount of love fest in this town for Russell. But can you put it in a national perspective? I mean, when you talk to your counterparts across this country, and you hear what the national guys are saying, is it just us in the 206 and the 360, or are you talking to guys in New York and L.A. and Boston that are saying, yeah, that Russell guy, you guys got lucky in the third round, you've got a keeper?
Once we got to the postseason, and I would say the primetime game against San Francisco at the end of the year, that Sunday night game, I think that's when it really started to change. But, yeah, I did a number of interviews during the playoffs with folks who were trying to figure out how they hadn't noticed this guy before. And so the love fest is growing. The upside is he's going to get the recognition he deserves next year. Potential downside is the Seahawks are not going to fly under anybody's radar next year. In fact, they have already been picked as one of the teams favored to go to the Super Bowl. So there's going to be some work ahead.
Yeah, that's well. Now we're gonna try. I know we've only got you for a couple more minutes here, Jen. And again, Jen Mueller of Talk Sporty to Me and Root Sports. I just want to have you explain to me a little bit about Talk Sporty to Me. You seem to have put a great deal of time and effort into this, and quite frankly, I don't know where you find the time to do it, but obviously you do. So tell us a little bit about Talk Sporty to Me. What inspired you to start this, and where's it going for you?
Well, here's the basic premise behind Talk Sporty, is that there is a place for sports conversations and work. And there is a way to leverage them to create more opportunities for you at work. In fact, I was just working on some stuff related to the NFL season. You know, and there's stuff related to the baseball season. If you're trying to get on somebody's radar, if you are trying to get FaceTime with an influencer like the CEO or CFO or GM, you know, if you are trying to just make a name for yourself and looking for ways to brand yourself, it's all be done during sports conversations. Mm-hmm. Sports conversations that last 15 or 30 seconds. So I go out and do training and help people understand, one, the importance of workplace communication, and two, how sports conversations works into that, and three, just making sure that they understand, you know, how to get that done.
Okay, I think I got a good feel for it now. But then again, I've read all of the stuff on your site. So
well, hopefully more people will go and read that.
That's what we're shooting for here. Now, I don't know if you knew that this was going to be coming or not, but here it goes. You make mention that people, when they come to your seminars, they get to hear about your successes and your failures.
Mm-hmm. Goodness, here it comes.
So tell us about one of your failures.
Gosh, there's been plenty. I will tell you that Doug Baldwin bailed me out of a huge failure in our very first interview. This was before the last season. So remember, he came out undrafted, free agent rookie.
Right, out of Stanford.
Tears it up during the preseason, right?
Yeah, right.
And I did not talk to him until the fourth preseason game. And so I go up to him, and I'm always a little nervous if I haven't met the guys or talked to him, and I rattled off the most rambling, incoherent, stupid question. I couldn't even repeat it if I tried because I have no idea what I asked. And Doug just kind of looked at me, and he's trying to be polite, and, you know, here he is. He's like 22 years old. He doesn't know what to do, and he looks at me, and he says, I'm not sure that I have a great answer for that question. And I looked at him, and I'm thinking, oh, dear Lord, you are such a sweetheart for that. I said, let me rephrase that. And we went about it again. And afterwards, the interview went off. It was fine. And afterwards, he says, I'm so sorry. I think I misunderstood the question. And I said, no, Doug, I asked the worst question in the entire world, and you covered my butt on that one. Those sorts of things happen. I have forgotten questions mid-sentence on live TV. That is embarrassing.
Yeah.
And that's when you just kind of repeat, or you're honest. You go, oh, my gosh, you know what? I am so excited over the end of this game. I just lost my train of thought. Hoping that somebody will throw you a lifeline, because that is the worst feeling, to be on live TV with nothing to say.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Well, we can understand that. We've decided to add cameras and a green screen here in our studio, and that means we can't wear our pajamas to the studio anymore. So I totally feel you. You know, I mean,
yeah. You know what? Here's what I do not understand. Everybody's doing that, right? Everybody in radio is doing webcasting and all this stuff. Do they not understand that the beauty of radio is that nobody can see you? You've got to really use this to your advantage.
Well, Rob Tepper certainly
you're going to have like hair and makeup people in there, and it just complicates way too many things.
And Jen, if you haven't seen the video yet, it's people like me have faces made for radio, not video, so it's all good. And again, we're talking with Jen Mueller with Talk Sporting to Me and with Root Sports. Jen, listen, I want to thank you for coming on with us tonight and spending some time and just sharing some stories with us and talking sports. We'd love to have you on again sometime. And listen, do me a favor. When you go to spring training and you're in Peoria and you're under the beautiful sun and you're checking out some baseball, just think about the two guys stuck back in Bremerton doing the show from the basement, and just enjoy some ball for us.
Send your way.
And enjoy some ball for us, will you?
Yes, absolutely. Will do. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, Jen. There she goes, Jen Mueller. Again, check out our website, talksportytome.com. Go get the ebook. Go download the ebook. Go read through that. Again, there's some great stuff in there. And
I'm going to download it because God knows I could learn.
You haven't
a few
read
things.
it yet? I read it. I thought it was awesome, and some of the things in here that I think are really true, and it's stuff that I never thought about before, and some of it is stuff that you and I and people that are listening to the show already do, which is you're essentially using sports and your love of sports and your knowledge of sports as a way to connect to other people,
right?
And a way to build communication, and a way to build rapport, and a way to interact with people that share the same loves that you do,
right?
And
sure.
I think that she illustrates that extremely well. But it's something we all do. I mean, you and I have done it for years and not even known it,
right? Well, and the thing is that for us, we do it every Sunday night, you know, and for the rest of the people out there, whether you're selling real estate or insurance or no matter what you do for a living, the idea is that you can broaden your communication skills by doing this. I don't know that. Woo! Oh, nail it. That's okay. We're gonna get that.
It's all right. We'll take a break.
And bear with us for just half a second. I mean, Caleb has done so much work on this system. There's a lot of new things.
All right, stick around. Outlaw Radio Network. We're back after this.
You're listening to the Outlaw Radio Network. OutlawRadioNetwork.com. From NPR News in Washington, I'm Jim Hawk. A huge weather system stretches from the Dakotas through the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley all the way down to Louisiana and Mississippi. A blizzard warning covers northern Nebraska as well as eastern South Dakota and western Minnesota. In the south, a tornado tore through Hattiesburg, Mississippi and damaged the campus of the University of Southern Mississippi. National Weather Service meteorologist Joanne Cullen says the worst of the bad weather is over for now.
The front that moves through is supposed to stall, so we will be seeing repeated rounds of rainfall over the next few days, but the severe risk should start to diminish.
A flash flood watch covers northern Alabama and Georgia. In the northeast, a freezing rain advisory remains in effect for parts of Pennsylvania and New York State after a major snowstorm hit the northeast Friday night. Across the northeast, people are getting ready to head back to work after that weekend of digging out from a blizzard that brought several feet of snow across much of the region. From member station WSHU, Craig Lamolt reports that President Obama declared a state of emergency in Connecticut.
Kim Overton and her husband shoveled out their car, which was surrounded by a wall of snow from passing plows in Stamford, Connecticut.
I'm going to do a little bit today, and I don't know if I'm going to get it all done because we only got one shovel. So if not, I'll just public transportation, which is probably safer anyway, till they get the streets together a little bit better.
The president's emergency declaration means federal money will be used to help state and local response efforts. Connecticut Governor Dannel Malloy says state police have responded to more than 400 car accidents, and at least 5 people in the state were killed in storm-related incidents. For NPR News, I'm Craig Lamolt in Stamford, Connecticut.
Los Angeles officials are offering a $1 million reward for information that will lead to the capture of ex-police officer Christopher Dorner, who is suspected of killing 3 people. The offer comes as search teams spent a 4th day trying to track him down. From L.A., Danielle Carson reports.
The city of Los Angeles, law enforcement, and private groups all contributed to the $1 million reward pot. Police Chief Charlie Beck said the size of the reward isn't so much about capturing a fugitive as it is about preventing another murder.
This is an act, and make no mistake about it, of domestic terrorism. This is a man who has targeted those that we entrust to protect the public.
In the manifesto posted on Facebook, Dorner says he was unfairly fired from the LAPD 4 years ago. Beck is reopening the investigation into Dorner's firing. The police chief says it's not to appease a murderer, but to assure the public his department is fair and transparent. For NPR News, I'm Danielle Carson in Los Angeles.
Gasoline prices have shot up 25 cents a gallon over the past 2 weeks. The average nationally now stands at $3.59 a gallon. You're listening to NPR News in Washington. Islamist extremists have been flushed from power in a number of major cities in northern Mali, but they're not giving up. Militants snuck into the city of Gao in canoes Sunday afternoon and attacked Mali's army. France and other nations are trying to restore government control on the vast Saharan nation in northwest Africa. Marine General Joseph Dunford has assumed command of the NATO mission in Afghanistan. As NPR's Sean Carberry reports, Dunford is expected to be the final U.S. commander of the NATO campaign, which concludes at the end of 2014.
In a ceremony in Kabul, Marine General John Allen handed over command to General Dunford.
By order of the Secretary of Defense of the United States of America.
Dunford will oversee the final stages of the transition to Afghan-led security and the withdrawal of 66,000 U.S. troops.
I'll endeavor to continue the momentum of the campaign and support the people of Afghanistan as they seize the opportunity for a brighter future.
Dunford assumes command amid concerns whether Afghan forces will be ready to assume full responsibility for security in Afghanistan. Sean Carberry, NPR News, Kabul.
At the 55th Annual Grammy Awards in Los Angeles, the group simply named Fun has won the Grammy for Song of the Year for We Are Young. It's the New York pop rock trio's first Grammy win. The Black Keys won Grammys for Best Rock Song and Best Rock Album. On the more obscure side, the Best Folk Album was The Great Rodeo Sessions. Identity Thief is the top draw at movie theaters this weekend. The comedy starring Jason Bateman and Melissa McCarthy earned over $36 million in its opening weekend. Warm Bodies came in second, followed by Side Effects. I'm Jim Hawk, NPR News in Washington.
Founded in 2009, Guardian Broadcasting is dedicated to giving a voice to the listeners of Kitsap County and beyond. At Guardian Broadcasting, our motto is broadcasting without boundaries. What does that mean? It means that at Guardian Broadcasting, we don't follow the same rules as the major media outlets. We believe that you deserve a voice. We don't filter what we tell you, and we don't filter what you say. We give you all the information that you need from both sides, and then we allow you to form your own opinion. We also give you the chance